The sound a $76,000 pay cut makes when it hits the conference table is something you never forget. It's not the rustle of paper or the thud of a briefcase closing. It's the dead silence that follows when someone you trusted just financially executed you with a smile. Effective immediately, your salary is being adjusted to $42,000 annually, Ray Hutchinson said, sliding that death sentence across the polished oak like he was passing the salt. His corporate smile never wavered, not even when he watched my face process what he'd just done. My name's Walt Patterson. I'm 52 years old, and until that moment in March 2024, I thought loyalty meant something in corporate America. 23 years of marriage to Nancy, 2 kids heading to college, and a mortgage that doesn't care about company restructuring. That's the backdrop of my life when Ray decided to destroy it. You want to know what $76,000 looks like in real terms? That's my son Mark's tuition at Michigan State for engineering. That's my daughter Sarah's pre-med dreams at University of Michigan. That's the difference between the American dream and financial disaster. And Ray just erased it with a pen stroke. I don't understand, I managed to say, my voice steady despite everything inside me screaming. My performance reviews have been excellent for 5 consecutive years. The Henderson automation project I led saved this company $400,000 last quarter alone. Ray leaned back in his leather chair, adjusting his $200 tie. This guy was 49, looked like he'd never touched a wrench in his life, and had been operations director for exactly 8 months, long enough to make his mark by destroying other people's lives. Walt, we're implementing across-the-board cost reductions. The board demands 15% savings in operational expenses. You're fortunate we're not eliminating positions entirely. Fortunate. He cut my salary by 64% and called me fortunate. See, here's what you need to understand about corporate speak. When they say restructuring, they mean we're about to screw you. When they say cost reductions, they mean your family's financial security doesn't matter. And when they say you're fortunate, they mean they've calculated exactly how much pain you can absorb before you break. Patricia Crawford cleared her throat from the corner of the room. She was 45, HR manager, and had perfected the art of making legal threats sound like helpful advice. Walt, I'd recommend reviewing Section 12.4 of your employment agreement. Compensation terms are subject to modification based on operational requirements. I knew Section 12.4 by heart. Every employee at Precision Engineering Corp learned it the hard way. But here's what Patricia and Ray didn't know about me. I keep documentation on everything. 20 years in manufacturing engineering after 8 years in the Navy teaches you that details matter, and the devil lives in those details. What specific operational requirements justify this reduction? I asked, pulling out my phone. To record the conversation. And can you provide the metrics used to determine my salary adjustment? Ray's smile flickered for just a second. That's proprietary information. Company policy. Company policy. The universal excuse for when they can't justify screwing you over. I looked around that conference room, the same room where I'd presented cost-saving innovations for the past 6 years. The same room where my manufacturing automation process had been celebrated as revolutionary and game-changing. The same room where Ray was now telling me I wasn't worth $118,000 annually. I need to discuss this with my family, I said, standing up. When do I need to respond? The adjustment is effective immediately, Patricia said, consulting her tablet. Your next paycheck will reflect the new compensation structure. Immediately. No transition period, no discussion, no consideration for the fact that I had financial obligations based on my previous salary. Just corporate efficiency at its finest. I walked out of that building and sat in my Ford F-150 for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. How was the meeting? Still think it's about the promotion? Right. I'd told her this morning that Ray wanted to discuss my career development. I'd actually thought they might be promoting me to senior manufacturing engineer. Shows you how naive a guy can be after 20 years of faithful service. The drive home to our subdivision in Warren, Michigan gave me time to think. Nancy would be waiting in the kitchen, probably with coffee ready, expecting good news. Mark would be upstairs working on his calculus homework, dreaming about his engineering degree. Sarah would be studying for her AP biology exam, focused on her medical school goals. How do you walk into that house and tell your family that everything just changed? How do you explain that the company you've given 2 decades of your life to just decided you're worth 36% of what you were worth yesterday? I pulled into our driveway and sat there for another 5 minutes, looking at the house we'd bought in 2019. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nothing fancy, but enough space for a family. The mortgage payment was $2,800 monthly, calculated based on my $118,000 salary. Insurance, property taxes, utilities, all the fixed costs that don't care about corporate restructuring. My phone rang. Tom Rodriguez, my old Navy buddy who'd gone into patent law after his service. We'd served together on the USS Michigan back in the 90s, stayed in touch over the years through holiday cards and the occasional beer when he was in town. "Walt, how's the civilian world treating you?" "Like a red-headed stepchild," I said. "Actually, Tom, I might need some legal advice." "Work problems?" "You could say that. They just cut my salary from $118K to $42K, effective immediately." Long pause. Tom had been practicing intellectual property law for 15 years, and he knew corporate games when he heard them. "That's not a reduction, Walt. That's constructive dismissal. They're trying to force you to quit." "That's what I figured." "What reason did they give?" "Cost reductions, operational requirements, the usual corporate BS." "Walt, do you have any intellectual property issues with this company? Patents, trade secrets, anything like that?" I almost laughed. If Tom only knew. "Funny you should ask. I might have a few cards they don't know I'm holding. We need to talk. Can you drive down to Detroit tomorrow?" "I'll be there." I hung up and finally walked into the house. Nancy was in the kitchen, just like I'd predicted, coffee pot ready and that expectant smile on her face. "So," she said, "Senior Engineer Patterson has a nice ring to it." I sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd celebrated Mark's acceptance to Michigan State, where we'd helped Sarah with her college applications, where we'd planned our financial future based on the assumption that hard work and loyalty meant something. "Nancy, we need to talk." The conversation with Nancy went about as well as you'd expect. 23 years of marriage teaches you to read faces, and hers cycled through confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, that particular brand of worry that comes with financial catastrophe. "They can't just do that," she said, gripping her coffee mug like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "Can they?" "Apparently they can." I pulled out my phone and showed her the email Patricia had sent while I was driving home. Effective immediately. New salary structure, operational requirements. Nancy stared at the screen. She worked part-time as a medical office administrator, bringing in about $28,000 annually. Nice supplemental income when your husband makes $118K. Survival money when he doesn't. "Walt, our mortgage alone is $2,800 a month. That's not counting insurance, utilities, groceries, car payments. Mark's tuition is $15,000 per semester. Sarah's looking at $18,000 for her first year." I knew the numbers. Had been running them in my head since Ray dropped his bombshell. "We've got savings, about $45,000 in the emergency fund. That'll buy us some time." "Time for what? To find another job that pays $118K at 52 in this economy?" She wasn't wrong. The manufacturing sector in Michigan wasn't exactly booming with opportunities for guys my age. Most companies wanted young engineers they could pay half my previous salary and work 60 hours a week. Mark walked into the kitchen, backpack slung over his shoulder. Senior year, 18 years old, already accepted to Michigan State's engineering program. Kid had my aptitude for math and his mother's common sense, a dangerous combination. "What's with the serious faces?" he asked, grabbing an apple from the bowl. Nancy looked at me. We'd always been straight with our kids about family finances, taught them the value of money and hard work. No reason to start lying now. "My company reduced my salary," I said. "Significantly." "Like how significantly?" "About $76,000 worth." Mark stopped mid-bite. This kid could do math in his head faster than most people could reach for a calculator. $76,000. "Dad, that's like most of your salary." "Yeah, son, it is." "Can they do that legally?" "Apparently." Mark sat down at the table, apple forgotten. "What does this mean for college?" Here's the thing about being a father. You spend 18 years trying to give your kids opportunities you never had. And then life reminds you that you're not in control of anything. We'll figure it out, I said. Student loans, scholarships, maybe you take a gap year and we reassess. I don't want a gap year. I want to study engineering like my old man, like his old man, the old man who just got financially executed by corporate restructuring. Sarah appeared in the doorway, probably drawn by the unusual family meeting vibe. 16, smart as a whip, already talking about pre-med at University of Michigan. What's going on? Nancy filled her in. Sarah listened with that serious expression she got when processing complex problems. Same look she had when studying organic chemistry. How much do you make now? She asked. $42,000. That's like less than some teachers make. Yeah, sweetheart, it is. That's stupid. You're like the smartest engineer I know. Thanks, kiddo. Unfortunately, smart doesn't always translate to fair. The next morning, I drove down to Detroit to meet Tom at his law office. Rodriguez and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and intimidating legal diplomas. Tom had done well for himself since leaving the Navy. "Walt, you look like hell," he said, offering me coffee in a mug that probably cost more than my new daily wage. "Feel worse. Talk to me about constructive dismissal. It's when an employer makes working conditions so intolerable that a reasonable person would quit. Massive salary reductions definitely qualify." Tom leaned back in his chair. "But here's the thing. Proving it in court is expensive and time-consuming, and you still end up unemployed. So what are my options? Depends. You mentioned intellectual property yesterday. What kind of cards are you holding?" This was the moment I'd been building towards since Ray's ambush. You remember how I always tinkered with process improvements, even back on the ship? Yeah, you were always sketching out ways to make things run better. Well, I never stopped. Been working on a manufacturing automation process for the past 6 years. Precision parts assembly cuts production time by 35%, reduces waste by nearly 50%. Tom sat up straighter. And? I implemented it at Precision Engineering in 2019. Company's been using it ever since. Saves them approximately $1.8 million annually. "Walt, please tell me you filed for a patent." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder. Filed in 2018, approved in 2020. Patent number 10,845,327. The Patterson process for automated precision manufacturing. Tom's eyes widened as he read the patent certificate. "Holy shit, Walt. They've been using your patented process for 5 years without a licensing agreement? That's exactly what they've been doing. This is federal intellectual property infringement. We're talking serious money here." Tom was already reaching for his calculator. "If they've saved $1.8 million annually for 5 years, that's $9 million in total benefit from your invention. What does that mean in terms of damages? Standard licensing fees for manufacturing patents run 15–25% of cost savings. Let's be conservative and say 20%. That's $360,000 annually, times 5 years of unauthorized use. I did the math. $1.8 million in back royalties, plus punitive damages for willful infringement, plus ongoing licensing fees. Walt, we're looking at a settlement that could hit $2.5 million, maybe more." For the first time since Ray's ambush, I smiled. A real smile, not the corporate meeting fake smile I'd been wearing for years. "Tom, I think it's time Precision Engineering learned about respecting intellectual property. Walt, before we proceed, I need to ask, do you have documentation proving you developed this process independently?" I opened my briefcase wider and pulled out a thick binder. Development notes from 2017-2018, patent application timeline, implementation emails, efficiency reports. I keep good records. Tom flipped through the documentation, his grin getting wider with each page. "Walt, my friend, you don't just have cards, you're holding a royal flush." The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. By day, I played the role of the defeated employee, showed up at 7:30 a.m., did my reduced responsibility work, ate lunch alone in my cubicle, and left at 5 p.m. sharp. Ray had made it clear that my new position involved routine maintenance oversight and basic quality control. Busy work for a guy who'd spent 20 years designing innovative solutions. But every evening, I was on the phone with Tom, building our case like we were planning a military operation. And in a way, we were. "Walt, I've researched comparable patent infringement cases, Tom said during one of our nightly strategy sessions. The key is demonstrating willful infringement versus innocent use. What's the difference? Innocent infringement is when a company unknowingly uses a patented process. Willful infringement is when they know about the patent and use it anyway. The penalties are much steeper for willful. Well, they definitely know I developed the process. I presented it to the engineering team in 2019. Ray was there for the presentation. Perfect. Do you have documentation of that presentation? I looked at the filing cabinet in my home office, organized with the precision that 8 years in the Navy had drilled into me. PowerPoint slides, meeting minutes, implementation timeline, efficiency reports, even photos of the prototype machinery. Walt, you're making this too easy. Most patent cases struggle with documentation. You've got a paper trail that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Meanwhile, Ray was busy implementing his cost-saving measures across the entire operation. 3 other engineers had received salary cuts, though none as severe as mine. 2 veteran machinists were laid off entirely. The guy was making his mark, all right, burning through 30 years of institutional knowledge to impress corporate executives who probably couldn't find Michigan on a map. I watched him strut around the factory floor, clipboard in hand, looking like he was conducting a symphony of efficiency. What Ray didn't realize was that his cost-cutting was actually hurting production. The Patterson process required precise calibration and understanding of tolerances. The newer engineers he'd assigned to maintain it didn't have the experience to optimize the settings. "Patterson," Ray called out during one of his floor inspections. "The automation line is running 12% slower than last month. What's the problem?" I looked at him with the expression I'd perfected over 3 weeks of swallowing my pride. Could be calibration issues. The process requires specific parameter adjustments based on material composition and ambient temperature. So fix it. I'd be happy to, but that's outside my current job responsibilities. You'd need to assign someone with senior-level authority to make those adjustments. Ray's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what I was saying. He'd demoted me to a position where I couldn't fix the very problems his cost-cutting had created. Fine. Submit a work order through proper channels. Proper channels. Code for bureaucratic red tape that ensures nothing gets done quickly. That evening, Nancy found me in the home office, surrounded by patent documentation and legal papers. Our financial situation had stabilized somewhat. She'd picked up extra hours at the medical office, and we'd tightened our budget everywhere possible. But the stress was wearing on all of us. "How much longer?" she asked. "Tom thinks we'll be ready to approach them next week. Depends on how quickly he can finalize the damage assessment. And if they refuse to settle, then we file a federal lawsuit and let a judge sort it out. But Tom thinks they'll settle. Patent infringement cases are expensive to defend, and we have overwhelming evidence." Nancy sat down across from me, picking up the patent certificate. "You know, I still can't believe you never told me about this. 6 years of work and you kept it secret?" "It wasn't secret. I wanted to make sure it worked before I got everyone excited. You know how many of my projects don't pan out. Walt, this isn't a backyard workshop experiment. This is a legitimate invention that's made millions for your company." She was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped thinking of myself as an inventor and started thinking of myself as just another company employee. Maybe that was my mistake. Being too loyal, too willing to share innovations without protecting my interests. Mark knocked on the office door. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Son, are you nervous?" "About the legal stuff, I mean. It was a good question." Was I nervous? 20 years of steady employment, and I was about to potentially blow it up over a patent dispute. Yeah, I'm nervous. But sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. Is that what they taught you in the Navy? Among other things. The Navy taught me that you don't abandon your shipmates, you don't leave a job half-finished, and you don't let people take advantage of your good nature indefinitely. And Mom's okay with this? Nancy reached over and squeezed my hand. Your father spent 20 years making other people rich with his ideas. It's time he got something back. The following Monday, Tom called with the final damage assessment. "Walt, I've got the numbers. Based on 5 years of unauthorized use at $360,000 annual licensing fees, plus punitive damages for willful infringement, plus legal costs and interest, we're looking at a total claim of $2.8 million. Jesus, that's real money. That's life-changing money. More importantly, it's what they legally owe you. The question is whether we approach them for settlement or file suit immediately. What do you recommend? Let's give them a chance to do the right thing. I'll draft a settlement letter outlining our position and giving them 10 business days to respond. If they're smart, they'll settle. If they're stupid, we'll let a federal judge explain intellectual property law to them. Draft the letter. That evening, I requested a meeting with Ray and Patricia for the following Thursday. I told them I had some concerns about my employment situation that needed to be addressed. They probably figured I was going to beg for my old salary back or negotiate some kind of severance package. They had no idea what was coming. Wednesday night, I laid out my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to job interviews and funeral services. Nancy ironed a fresh shirt, and I polished my dress shoes until they gleamed. If you're going to war, you might as well look professional. You ready for this? Nancy asked as I adjusted my tie. I've been ready for 20 years. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical Michigan weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove to work with Tom's settlement letter in my briefcase, along with copies of all supporting documentation. The patent certificate, the implementation timeline, the efficiency reports, the financial analysis. Everything that proved Precision Engineering had been stealing from me for 5 years. Ray and Patricia were waiting in the same conference room where they'd ambushed me a month earlier. Same polished table, same corporate artwork on the walls, same smug expressions on their faces. Time to change that. Walt, good of you to request this meeting, Ray said, gesturing to the chair across from him like he was granting me an audience. Patricia and I have been discussing your adjustment period, and we think there might be some opportunities for additional responsibilities. Corporate speak for more work at the same terrible pay. Actually, Ray, I wanted to discuss a different matter entirely, I said, setting my briefcase on the table with deliberate precision. It's about intellectual property. Patricia looked up from her legal pad. Intellectual property? Specifically, it's about the Patterson process. Ray's confident expression flickered for just a moment. The what? The manufacturing automation process I developed and implemented in 2019. The one that's been saving Precision Engineering approximately $1.8 million annually for the past 5 years. I opened my briefcase and removed a thick folder, placing it squarely in the center of the table. The patent certificate was on top, official government seal clearly visible. Walt, Patricia said carefully, leaning forward to read the document, what exactly is this? United States Patent Number 10,845,327. The Patterson Process for Automated Precision Manufacturing, filed in 2018, approved in 2020, owned by Charles Patterson, that's me. Ray grabbed the patent certificate, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension. This is impossible. You developed this process while employed here. It's company property. Actually, Ray, I developed it on my own time, using my own resources, starting in 2017. Check the patent application date versus the implementation timeline at Precision Engineering. I applied 8 months before introducing the process to the company. The room went dead silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the sound of Patricia frantically taking notes. What exactly are you saying, Walt? She asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. I'm saying that Precision Engineering has been using my patented intellectual property for 5 years without authorization, licensing agreement, or compensation. According to federal law, that constitutes willful patent infringement. I pulled out the second document, Tom's settlement letter printed on official law firm letterhead. This is from my attorney, Tom Rodriguez of Rodriguez & Associates, patent law specialists. He's calculated damages at $2.8 million. Ray's face had gone from corporate tan to ash gray. Your attorney? 20 years of faithful service, Ray. 20 years of innovations, cost savings, and loyalty. And you repaid that by cutting my salary 64% to impress some executives who don't know a wrench from a screwdriver. I stood up, buttoning my suit jacket. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to restore my salary to $118,000, retroactive to the date of reduction. You're going to pay $360,000 annually in licensing fees for the ongoing use of my process. And you're going to compensate me $1.8 million in back royalties for the 5-year period of unauthorized use. Patricia was writing furiously. Walt, these are very serious allegations. We'll need time to review. You have 10 business days, I interrupted. After that, we file a federal lawsuit and add punitive damages to the claim. Patent infringement carries treble damages, which would bring the total to about $8.4 million. Ray finally found his voice. This is extortion. No, Ray. Extortion is threatening someone with something illegal. This is called protecting intellectual property rights under federal law. There's a difference, though I understand the distinction might be lost on someone who thinks cutting loyal employees' salaries by 64% is good business practice. I closed my briefcase and headed for the door. Oh, and Ray, you might want to check the efficiency reports on the automation line. It's been running 15% slower since you reassigned maintenance to less experienced personnel. Turns out my process requires someone who actually understands the technology to optimize it properly. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in corporate panic. Tom called me Friday afternoon, barely able to contain his laughter. Walt, I just got off the phone with Precision Engineering's corporate counsel. They want to meet Monday morning. Emergency session. Good or bad? For you? Christmas morning. For them? They just realized they've been driving a stolen car for 5 years, and the owner has the keys. The settlement meeting was held at a neutral location, a law office in downtown Detroit with more marble than a Roman temple. Ray was there, looking like he'd aged a decade in 72 hours. Patricia brought the company's lead counsel and 2 executives I'd never seen before, probably sent from corporate headquarters to figure out how badly they'd screwed up. Tom laid out our case with the precision of a military briefing: patent documentation, implementation timeline, financial impact analysis, comparable licensing agreements from similar cases. By the time he finished, it was clear that Precision Engineering had stepped into quicksand. "What are your settlement terms?" their lead counsel asked. "Full salary restoration to $118,000, retroactive to March 1st, Tom began. Licensing agreement for ongoing use at $360,000 annually. Back royalties of $1.8 million for unauthorized use from 2019 to 2024. And $200,000 in legal fees and compensatory damages. Quick math, $2.36 million, plus ongoing annual licensing fees." One of the corporate executives whispered something urgent to their lawyer, who nodded grimly. "We need 24 hours to discuss terms with our board," the counsel said. 24 hours, Tom agreed. After that, we filed the federal suit. They settled. Full terms, no conditions, payment within 30 days. I walked out of that law office with a check for $2.36 million and a licensing agreement that would pay me $360,000 annually for as long as Precision Engineering used my process. Ray Hutchinson was reassigned to special projects the following week. Corporate code for "we're moving you somewhere you can't hurt anyone else." Patricia Crawford suddenly became very interested in employment law compliance training. As for me, Nancy and I paid off the mortgage, set up college funds that would cover Mark's engineering degree and Sarah's medical school dreams, and I still work at Precision Engineering. Same office, same job, but now when I suggest process improvements, people listen with a lot more respect. Mark starts at Michigan State this fall, studying engineering like his old man. Sarah's already been accepted to University of Michigan's pre-med program. The American dream is not only back on track, it's got a first-class ticket. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about what happened to Ray. Here's the thing. I spent 20 years being the good soldier, the loyal company man, the guy who put the corporation's interests ahead of his own. When they decided to financially destroy me for their convenience, they forgot one important detail. They were messing with a Navy veteran who'd learned that you don't start fights, but you damn sure finish them. That patent certificate isn't just hanging on my office wall as decoration. It's a reminder that innovation, documentation, and knowing your worth can beat corporate greed every single time. Ray learned that lesson the expensive way. $2.36 million expensive. Best investment in employee education Precision Engineering ever made.